Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maximo and I'm here checking out Demon's Tilt. I should have checked this out a while ago, I apologize for that. But I did not realize this game had come out. I was expecting it to stay in like Steam Early Access for months when I heard about it. It's like, okay, I'll come and check on it later. And as I was looking through, funnily enough, the Switch new releases, I saw that it was there, and I'm like, wait, this game came out? And then I went and had a look on the Steam page and said, yeah, this game came out a month ago, you moron. So yeah, I picked it up and I'm taking a look at it. Before I go any further though, I have to thank PlayAsia for sponsoring this video. If you want to support me and the channel, there's a link in the description. Use that and the coupon code BLUEVITA to save some money off your order and help me out in the process. I'd really appreciate it. Anyway, now that that's done, let's actually talk about the game. So, it's clearly taking some inspiration from old school... excuse me. It's clearly taking some inspiration from old school digital pinball, i.e. Epic Pinball and Pinball Fantasies, Pinball Dreams, and what have you. But they're throwing a few of their new ideas into the mix as well, which makes things quite interesting. So, let me tell you about them. The table is actually pretty simple, all things considered. It's got the whole hit monsters to attack them sort of thing going on. If you hit them enough, or if you hit their targets enough, you destroy them. It's also got unique missions. So there's 3 individual tiers on the table. There's the bottom, the middle, and the top. And they've each got their own rituals, which you start by hitting certain shots. These rituals are usually things like hit targets, kill enemies, do things like that. And if you pull them off, it'll give you extra score multipliers. And you got to try and get as many of these done as possible so that you can get as high a multiplier as possible. Points in this game are given to you for basically everything, but it's the multipliers that really count. And the multipliers in this game can get ridiculous. I've had the multiplier get up to something like 150, and that's not even close to how high it can go. So you really do want to be focusing on those missions because they give you multipliers. You can also get multipliers from doing other things. There are little tokens you earn that you can take to a blacksmith on the first tier, and that will increase your multiplier even further. And there are also things like multi-ball that you can get by defeating monsters. Like there's a monster there on the first table that you can see roughly around the time that I'm saying this. If you manage to defeat every monster that spawns after killing the previous one on the first tier, you'll get a multi-ball. I believe they call those the Victory Lap multi-ball. There's also a couple of other kinds of multi-ball that you can get. One little problem I have with this table is that they don't actually have a guide in the game as to what the table is or how it works. Which, to be fair, you don't exactly need. You can figure out most of it by just playing the table, but I got to admit, it's just a little frustrating having to try and figure it all out yourself, but it's not that bad in the grand scheme of things. Most of it is pretty self-explanatory. There is one thing... Oh, actually, no, hang on. We'll talk about the physics first before we get into the major gameplay difference. So, the ball and its physics. I have something that I want to say about this later, but if we're just going to do a little bit of a general, how does the ball feel in general, I'd say it feels between good and great. It is generally responsive. It has a decent feel to it. It generally goes where you want it to go, but it can be a little bit iffy at times. It's definitely not based on like a real world sort of physics system. It's definitely a digital pinball system. It's not like they were trying to get as close to a accurate representation of a two-dimensional pinball table as possible. No, they're going for a kind of cartoony feel, and sometimes those physics can and will screw you if you're used to real tables, or at least tables trying to represent real, games trying to represent real pinball physics. They do, however, give this a bit of a booster. So, you might notice a little dangling skull in the bottom right of the user interface there. That's the tilt meter. Now, in most pinball games that I've played, and by most I mean all, you can't see your tilt meter. They'll warn you when you start to tilt the ball too heavily, but they will let you tilt like once or twice safely. In this game, you can tilt almost constantly. So you can throw out 5 or 6 tilts in a few second period. It's not infinite. So you do have to wait for the skull to calm down before you make the effort to tilt some more. But if you keep it up on a sort of good pace, you can do a lot of tilting. Like, seriously, a stupid amount of tilting. And the table takes advantage of this. There are multiple situations on this table where you may want to tilt. Like, for example, that. You gotta try and just keep your ball out of the outlanes as much as possible. Sometimes it helps you out by letting you, like, nudge over the edge to land in the head of the priestess, which is always useful because it's basically a free ticket to the third tier of the table. And there are a few other situations where it comes in handy as well. So you basically want to be tilting as much as you possibly can. This is a real change from pretty much every kind of digital pinball that I've ever played. And it's kind of awesome, if I'm being honest. It's actually really awesome. Having the nudge not only be, like, recommended, but melded into the gameplay of the table. I think it works really well, for the most part, being able to nudge your ball practically as much as you want, although there are still some situations where it doesn't really help, like that third ball loss there. Sometimes it feels like it's a little bit, it's a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? Ineffective. You can try and nudge to the side and forward and down and whatever, but on the 360 controller that I was playing with, it sets the default nudge controls to the left analog stick. And to be fair, I kind of understand that because, well, you don't want to do it on the Xbox 360 D-pad, that would be even worse. But as far as I can tell, it's only digital nudging, so it's not like you can really, it's not like you can be really precise about it. It's very easy to try and, like, nudge to the left and have it be, like, nudged down. So if I have any recommendation whatsoever, it would be plug in a PlayStation 4 controller and play using that. I did also try playing using the keyboard, but yeah, that's just not worth the time. Don't do that. You need access to the nudging way more than you might think, and it's kind of hard to set up a good control scheme with that. Although I will point out the controller support in this game is a little weird, and we'll get back to why that is later. So there's a couple of other things on the table which makes it interesting. The main thing being that it's kind of bullet hell. A weird thing to say about a pinball game, but it's true. A lot of the enemies and the bosses and all that let out bullet patterns, and these bullet patterns are basically extra obstacles on the table. If you run into them, you'll get knocked all over the place. This is actually a thing. And it's basically like the main counter to the fact that you can nudge all over the place. Because if you're capable of nudging and you didn't have, like, the bullets backing it up, it would be a surprisingly easy table, even with certain things like this asshole boss monster consistently, like, sending your ball back down. Yeah, you also kind of got to get used to cradling the ball in the flippers to let the bigger bullet swarms go by, because if you don't do that, your ball gets sent all over the place before you can even realize it. Like, as you can see, the ball just kind of disappeared down the bloody middle there, and I had very little time to react to it. This happens a lot. Like, I'm not even kidding, this happens way too much, and it gets really frustrating after a while. I can't count the amount of times that the bullet has just gone like a man possessed all over the goddamn table via the use of, like, bullets or some of the other table obstacles, and then straight down and drained before I can even react to it. I can't count them on one hand. This can get as bad as your ball falling down the left drain out lane, but that's okay, you've got a kickback. But you hit the kickback, go straight up and out, back onto the field where you hit another bullet, which immediately sends you back in the other direction, straight back into the same kickback lane, before you can react to it, before you can nudge it, before you can do anything to it. And the amount of times I almost yelled, "What the fuck?" when I was playing this is a bit too high. Like, even when I'm playing other tables, like, even other digital ones with physics that aren't exactly the greatest, like, Epic Pinball and Pinball Fantasies and what have you were great for their time, but their physics are still a little odd. And this game still has physics that are quite odd. So, oftentimes it'll feel like the ball is just possessed by something and it's going straight for the out lane, or, you know, not even just like that little bit off angle, just straight in, dead center. I've had a few times when the ball has felt like that, where it's just programmed to behave a certain way when it's going in a certain direction instead of being a little bit more freeform. And that's what I mean when I say the physics aren't great. I mean that sometimes it feels like it's just determined to go into a particular lane and you can't do anything to stop it. And it's really frustrating to deal with that, if I'm being honest. And I will say that, I mean, like, I know people are probably going to call me, like, you know, oh, you're not being very good at the game. You're not a very good pinball player. I'm just gonna say this. I'm actually in the top 100 scoreboard for this game. I don't know how I did it either, so I was playing out of my mind, admittedly, but this is a game where, considering the amount of skill that's actually involved, like, you've got the ability to nudge the table as much as you like. There's bullets all over the place that can change your field of motion, and there's even shit like the pentagram in this table. Like, it lights up from time to time and it spins your ball all over the place. It's one of the main reasons I lose my ball on the main table, because, man, it's so annoying. In the first tier, the pentagram can appear right in the middle of the table. It spins like crazy, and if your ball so much as touches it, it's gonna go insane. And that's gotten me killed more than a couple of times. It's really, really frustrating to deal with, especially with this game's physics, which, as I said, really does feel like it just, out of nowhere, decides that it wants to go down the out lane, and no matter how much tilting you do, you're not going to be able to stop it. It's, yeah, I'm in the top 100 scoreboard for this game on PC, and this game came out on PC like months ago, so I'm genuinely surprised that I did as well as I did, but yeah, I still think it's a bit much, if I'm being perfectly honest. So, there's 3 difficulty modes you can play the table on. Well, they're not really difficulties, but I think they changed a little bit of the physics here and there to support... I think they changed a little bit of the physics here and there between the table difficulties. So, there's normal mode, which has just the regular table and some rules. Then there's the EX mode, which is what all the footage that I've been playing is what you've been seeing so far, right? It adds things like a couple of extra rules. It adds the extra tables, like the one that's on screen right now, where you're hitting the... not entirely sure what kind of animal that is. It kind of looks like a giant snake monkey. I don't know. It's a demon of some kind. It's the reason why they call it Demon's Tilt. But, yeah, they add that. And they also change up they also change up some of the rules, although the game isn't very specific in what rules get changed. It's kind of weird like that. Again, there's no guide, so it's kind of hard to know exactly what they changed, but having played both the normal and the EX modes, I can say immediately that you basically just want to start playing on the EX mode, because all the normal mode really does is make like some of the bullet patterns a little easier to deal with, but not really. They're still going to be a massive pain in the ass to deal with either way. So yeah, I say start on EX mode immediately. There is also a brutal mode. Now, the brutal mode changes the bottom tier of the table so that it makes it so that it's easier for you to drain the ball. And it also gives you only 1 ball instead of the usual 3. And this seems like it'd be the most frustrating mode of them all to play, so I didn't even touch it. For obvious reasons, I was getting frustrated enough with the regular game as is. I didn't want to go into a mode where I've only got 1 ball, and the game is likely to just throw that ball down the out lane without me saying so much as how do you do. But it brings to question some of the table design, because due to the overall physics and like the rules of the table itself, the game becomes repetitive a fair bit faster than I think they mean to, and here's why. So the reason why I think this game gets repetitive a bit too quick is because it makes you want to stay on the second tier. And even the game guide that I saw on Steam recommends staying in the second tier as much as possible in brutal mode. But I say go one step further than that. Don't even bother going down there if you can avoid it. Because again, when you've got all of these bullet swarms flying around, when you've got the physics that seem determined to send the ball down one path or another, and you've got some weird stuff going on here and there, sometimes it feels like staying in the first tier is like a tightrope walk over a cliff. You feel like that you've basically got no chance of survival unless you get the hell out. It gets to the point where I find myself exploiting the little ball save that you get from time to time by doing things like beating the mini-bosses to just get back up onto the second tier, because I might be able to do it, but if that ball save runs out and I fail, I lose the ball. So it's better to just get back on the second tier and hope for the best while I'm up there. So it makes the table a fair bit more repetitive than I might have expected it to be, because you're spending so much time focusing on the second and third tiers that, well, it just becomes a little bit boring after a while, because this is the only table you get in the game. It's a well-produced table. Like, it looks nice. The overall amount of effects and level of detail that have gone into each of the goals, missions, just general design of it, it's all quite impressive, but it's still only one table. Even back in the DOS days, where you had to pay like $23.99, like for £23.99, I think it was. I actually went and I downloaded the shareware version of Epic Pinball to check this, but even when back then they knew to, no matter how good their tables were, always include more than one. They at least included 3 or 4, and for this game to come out with only one table, no matter how good that table is, it still feels a bit weird to only have one table. And it makes it all the more repetitive. Even bloody like Worms Pinball back in the day had 2, and the Worms one wasn't even the better one. It was a little strange. But yeah, I think that the table is well designed, but not well designed enough to keep people coming back, and I do have some evidence for this. So, the game has a bunch of achievements that it can track, right? And most of them, well not most of them, but like half of them, I've got half of the achievements in this game. Half of them are things like kill so many things, complete so many rituals, and just, you know, things along those lines, right? And one of the more rarer ones is in the second tier, the lane that starts the ritual, it has those spikes there that you can see. And the achievement is hit 500 of those. And I got that achievement within 3 hours in just like regular play. So it would generally mean that, you know, it's a pretty decent idea of how long people have lasted if it comes along naturally over the course of a few hours, right? Well, from the achievement for launching your first ball, which has a 90% achievement rate, which is weird, 10% of people started up the game and then never launched the first ball. It's odd, but I've seen worse. And then down to the spikes, it goes from 90% to 15%. Again, this is something that would usually come along naturally over the course of a couple of hours. So it just makes me wonder. It occurs to me that I left the mouse cursor in the screen the entire time. I apologize about that. Then again, I don't know why the game didn't decide to try and hide the mouse cursor when I was using a controller, but, well, that is one of the weird things about this game's PC version. We'll get to that. But yeah, considering that only 15% of people only got something that would regularly only take like 3 to 4 hours, it's pretty obvious that this table doesn't have a great amount of staying power. Good every now and again like, you know, once in a while, maybe, if you feel like something different from the usual set of digital pinball, but, you know, I don't see myself coming back to play this as much as I would, say, Medieval Madness or Attack from Mars. Not really fair to compare it to them, because they're basically two different beasts, but... Alright, here's a different one then, Big Race USA. Have you ever heard of that one? It was one of the pro pinball tables. One of my favorite, actually, it's probably my favorite digital pinball table of all time. But, of course, everyone else loved Time Shock, so, yeah. That was the one that got a HD remaster that then went completely to shit. We haven't heard from it in years. That still annoys me to this day. I wanted that HD version of Pro Pinball Big Race USA so badly, but no. But yeah, as I was saying, I don't think it has the staying power. That seems to be the major thing. There's no two-player mode, so there's nothing about that. There's no, like, special conditions or anything like that, and as I've already mentioned a couple of times already, this is the only table you get for $20 US, which I honestly think is a bit much. $15 would be a fair bit easier to recommend. At $10 it would be a go for it, but at $20 US, I had to pay like $28.99 Australian for it. At that price, you could go and buy 6 tables for Pinball FX3 from Williams. So you could get things like Attack from Mars, Medieval Madness, Tales of the Arabian Nights, Circus Voltaire, Safecracker. You know, a bunch of tables that, while they aren't as in-depth and detailed as this one, are still really enjoyable tables with great physics that have a plenty of variety to them. Hell, I'm still playing those tables to this day, despite having started playing them years ago in the Pinball Arcade. This game, maybe I'll pick it up once every couple of months if I want to play around with the tilt system, but yeah, the physics is just kind of what drives me away from it, if I'm being honest. What else do I have to talk about with it? The table itself is pretty well presented, as I've already said. It looks pretty good, and it runs at a decent frame rate. I'm playing this on a 8700K and an RTX 2080, and I'm getting some pretty high frame rates, as you can see in the top right corner. I also tried playing this on a GPD Win 2, and it worked okay there, but it was really pushing the poor thing. So, you know, kind of bad. Not great, but I mean, it'll run on some decent laptops. Not the lowest of the low, but it'll run on some decently spec'd laptops. There are a couple of weird things with the PC version, though, and I've got a list of them here. So, the in-game camera, you can see that it's pretty closely zoomed in, and that was my choice. I was playing this on a 6-inch and a 24-inch screen, and both of them felt like if I wanted to actually see what the ball was doing without being distracted by a bunch of other stuff, I had to set the camera zoom in as far as possible. And as it turns out, this actually kind of breaks the game in some ways, especially during multi-ball, where it focuses on the ball that is lowest on the table, which, to be fair, is kind of the, like, reasonable thing to do. But with how fast the ball can move in this game, it can get kind of sickening, especially when you're talking about multi-ball, when there's multiple balls that are capturing the attention of the camera at the same time. You've probably seen it once already in this video, and I think you'll see it again. But the balls will be going up and down like crazy, the camera will be going up and down like crazy, and it's enough to make some people motion sick. I started feeling not so great after like not like 10 minutes of constant multi-ball, but it was getting pretty up there. And it's also not helped out by the fact that if you've got the camera zoomed in as far as you can possibly go, it actually breaks some parts of the table. A few of the bonus tables, and even the top rung of the table here, you actually can't see the flippers when the camera is zoomed all the way in. At least not completely. Like, see? You'll only be able to see, like, the top of the flippers, and on some of the bonus tables it's even worse, because you literally can't see the flippers at all. It's so strange. You can play the game in tape mode, which is like turning your screen vertical and doing it that way, but I found myself not really able to get along with this because I don't have any monitors that I can rotate like that. So that's not really something I was able to do. That's pretty much all I've got to say on that one. Although, this game is coming out on Nintendo Switch. As of this recording, it hasn't, but I have heard that it's coming, so probably work alright there, all things considered. Yeah, as I said, the camera, I already talked about that one. I completely talked about that one already. The settings screen. Yeah, the settings screen is a bit weird. There are two different setting screens in the game. There's one that's out in the menu, and there's one that's in-game that has a completely different set of options. So, the one outside of the game only gives you 3 graphics settings: low, medium, and the best. Okay. And it's kind of hard to tell what the difference between them is, if I'm being honest, because again, you can't change them in-game. You have to go out of the game and then change them, and then you have to just, you know, go back in and try again. I've been playing with the graphics on max, by the way, or the best. And the other options in the game are a bit weird too. They give you a few things, like they have the ability to turn off screen shake, they have the ability to determine how you track the ball, they have the ability to add ball visibility trails, which I turned on immediately because it makes things so much easier. And there's a bunch of other things like that. But here's the thing. Due to the way the game's settings menu works, it's actually kind of impossible to see what some of these changes are until you actually go back into the pause menu, change them, and go back out again. But here's the thing. Every single time that you do this, the game forces you to count down from 3 to get back into the table, which can make it kind of hard to tell what the differences are, especially if you're trying to change the way the camera tracking works. So it ends up feeling like you're just banging your head against the wall trying to figure out what the options do, because as I was playing, I was trying to, like, you know, look at the options, figure out what they were doing for me, and just, you know, try and make the game work for me, but they don't tell you much about how exactly they work or demonstrate it, and having to go back into the game and try it again, and having to wait those precious few seconds while the memory of what it used to be like stayed inside my head. Well, it's just, it makes the entire process more frustrating than it needs to be. And I'd like to see some more explanations of what's going on there. I'd also like to point out you can't change your inputs while you're in the game, so it can be kind of annoying trying to figure out some input problems. I had an input problem. For some reason, my left flipper got stuck, just in the consistently up position for no reason halfway through a game. So I quit out of the game back to the main menu. I went to the options menu and I checked if the inputs were working okay, and they were. So I went back into the game and started a new one, and the left flipper was still stuck up. So I had to completely quit the game and then reopen the game, and it worked again. That was weird. I don't know what that was about. They do also give you some weird options like bloom and color correction, and again, those just kind of work against the whole thing, where you have to wait for the game to unpause to try and figure out what effect it really had. It's all just kind of a mess, honestly. It makes the whole thing feel kind of unpolished. I wish they'd put a little bit more effort into making it seem, I wish they put a little bit more effort into making the options menu work a little better. See that damn pentagram? I hate that damn pentagram. I don't even know what causes it to spawn. Because again, the game doesn't really tell you. Oh yeah, I should also point out that their default controller mapping on computers is really damn weird. For some reason, they've made it so that you can only go left and right with like the D-pad and up and down with the analog stick, or some combination of that, and you have to go and actually change the mapping in the game to make this not happen. It's weird. I don't know why they did it, but that's how it's set up. I'm not even going to claim to know. Again, it feels unpolished. The game came out of early access like a month ago, and it still feels like it needs like 1 or 2 more patches before it really should be. Also, some settings don't stick. I had a real pain in the ass time trying to keep the frame rate unlocked for this video, because every time I was trying to record with the video locked, it would introduce some severe input lag. But I figured it out eventually, but yeah, I had to go and constantly just try and make the settings stick. I'm not entirely sure what the deal was there, but yeah, pain in the neck. We're getting close to the end of this video, so I should probably wrap it up. I should also say that it sounds okay, but if I'm being honest, I was too focused on the actual pinball to really pay attention to it. So it was kind of hard for me to really pay attention to what the music and the sound was like, but I mean, I don't really have any massive problems with it, so it's probably okay. And that's what the game is, overall in a nutshell, really. It's okay. I don't mind it too much. I really wish the physics were a little bit more fair, or maybe just a little bit more loose. But outside of that, it's a fun enough game. I don't mind it. I don't think it's going to have any particular potential in lasting, basically. I don't think it's got that much in the way of long-term playability. Maybe with a couple of updates to it, maybe, but yeah, I think it's too much for 20 bucks. If it goes on sale for like $10 or less, it's not too hard to recommend. But at that price, it's something I can only really recommend to people who really enjoy their digital pinball. Because I think casual people with the game's high difficulty, reliance on nudging, and just general dickishness from time to time means that it's not really particularly suited towards the casual end. Like, I'm not that casual. I've been playing virtual pinball for years, and I still think this is a bit rough. So, there you go. I've been talking to a black screen for like a minute now. So, this has been Blue Maxima, and I will see you all next time.